It was 3 a.m. when Ibrahim Traore's secure line rang. Only 5 people in the Burkina Faso military even had the number. He answered immediately. Traoré, the voice on the other end was steady, but laced with urgency. Sir, this is Major. Sankara, we've detected unauthorized movement from Camp Kono. General Doumbié has mobilized the 3rd Battalion. They're en route to the presidential palace. Traoré rose from bed and moved silently to the window. In the distance, he could see the faint silhouettes of armored vehicles rolling through the darkness. Headlights dimmed, engines quiet. ETA? He asked, already calculating. 15 minutes to the outer perimeter. The guard's been alerted, but Doumbié likely has loyalists among them. And the other battalions? No response, sir, which meant one of 2 things. They were either complicit or had been neutralized. Traoré closed his eyes for a brief moment, absorbing the weight of betrayal. General Maurice Doumbié, his oldest comrade from the academy, his most trusted commander, the man he had elevated to Chief of Defense Staff, now the architect of a coup. Initiate Protocol Omega, Traoré said quietly, referring to the contingency plan known only to his innermost circle. I'll meet you at the rendezvous point in 10. As he dressed in civilian clothes, his mind flashed back to a meeting just 3 days earlier. Colonel Ouedraogo, his intelligence chief, had placed a dossier on his desk with uncharacteristic hesitation. Sir, we've intercepted communications. You need to see. Inside were transcripts, conversations between Doumbié and known operatives of French foreign intelligence, talks of regime change, economic restructuring, and promises of support in exchange for reversing Traoré's policies on foreign military bases and mining concessions. How reliable is this? Traoré had asked. Confirmed by multiple sources, Ouedraogo had said grimly. The French are offering him the presidency. He moves in 3 days. Traoré had made a decision then, not to arrest Doumbié. Not yet. He would wait. Watch. Let the betrayal surface fully. A calculated risk, one that now had armed convoys, closing in on his residence. Moving swiftly through a hidden passage that linked his quarters to a service exit, Traoré emerged into the night. A nondescript black sedan waited with its engine running. Major Sankara was behind the wheel. His relief was visible as Traoré slipped into the passenger seat. Without a word, they pulled away, taking a back route designed to avoid the military convoy. Status, Traoré said. Doumbié is leading the operation personally. He's deployed around 200 men from the 3rd Battalion. They have seized the national radio station and are positioning units near government buildings. And our countermeasures underway. Colonel Ouedraogo has activated the sleeper network. Phase 1 is complete. Traoré gave a small nod. A flicker of satisfaction broke across his face. Phase 1 had been executed 48 hours earlier, the discreet replacement of live ammunition in the 3rd Battalion's armory, with blanks and disabled rounds, carried out under the guise of a routine inspection. Doumbié's soldiers had just enough real firepower to look legitimate, but not enough to hold any ground once the counterattack began. The sedan pulled into a garage beneath an anonymous office building on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. This was the Shadow Command Center, a clandestine operational HQ known only to Traoré's most loyal circle. Illuminated dots pulsed on the tablet screen, representing troop positions across the capital. General Doumbié has entered the palace. Grounds, reported Colonel Ouedraogo. He'll discover your absence within minutes. Traoré took the device, studying the tactical layout with narrowed eyes. And the French? Have they shown their hand? Ouedraogo's expression darkened. Yes, sir. We've detected high-frequency encrypted transmissions from their embassy. A private jet landed at the military airfield an hour ago. No flight plan. Filed. Right on schedule, Traoré muttered. He turned to address the room. Commanders, intelligence officers, loyal staff. Gentlemen, this is not just a coup. This is a foreign-sponsored operation designed to seize control of our government, our gold, and our sovereignty. General Doumbié is not acting alone. He is the front man for those who never accepted our independence. Silence filled the room, grim, focused. We will not only stop this coup, Traoré continued, we will unmask its true architects. For all the world to see, at the presidential palace, General Maurice Doumbié strode confidently through the entrance, flanked by 3rd Battalion troops. The Presidential Guard had offered only token resistance. Some had defected. Others, warned in whispers, had simply disappeared. "Secure the 2nd floor," he ordered a lieutenant. Find Traoré. I want him alive. The coup needed legitimacy. A forced resignation, ideally broadcast live, would ease the transition. His radio crackled. General! The president is not here. No sign of him anywhere. Doumbié's brow furrowed. Unexpected but not fatal. Expand the search. Prepare the broadcast equipment. We move forward. He seated himself at Traoré's desk, powering on a laptop. The prepared speech appeared on screen. A formal statement declaring the military's intervention to restore constitutional order. Dawn broke over Ouagadougou in unsettling quiet. The usual city buzz was muted. Streets were half empty. Soldiers manned checkpoints at major intersections. A military vehicle idled outside the national radio station. At 6:00 a.m., programming was interrupted. This is a message from the National Committee for Salvation. The military has assumed temporary control to address unconstitutional actions by the former government. Citizens are advised to remain calm and stay indoors. In the Shadow Command, Center Traoré and his inner circle listened in silence. They're moving faster than expected, Ouedraogo said. Doumbié's probably under pressure from his French handlers. Is the evidence package ready? Traoré asked. Ouedraogo nodded, handing over a flash drive. Everything's on here. Intercepted calls, bank transfers, logs of secret meetings with French intelligence. Distribute it, Traoré ordered. Every news outlet, every social platform, community leaders. The people need to know who's behind this. He turned to the commanders of the 1st and 4th Battalions. Colonel Zongo, Colonel Caboret, are your units in position? They nodded sharply. Minimal force, Traoré reminded them. We want arrests, not martyrs. Across the city, a counter-operation unlike any before was unfolding. While 3rd Battalion troops manned checkpoints, unaware their flanks had been surrounded, their communications were compromised, their ammunition sabotaged, and their escape routes cut off. Simultaneously, citizens began receiving messages on their phones, PDFs, audio files, screenshots, secret meetings between Doumbié and French officials, plans to reinstate foreign control over Burkina Faso's gold mines, bank transfers, millions of euros to offshore accounts in Doumbié's name. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. At the French embassy, Ambassador Jean-Marc Léof was growing uneasy. The coup was underway, but Traoré had vanished. Worse, there had been no signs of support from the other military battalions, contrary to Doumbié's promises. Get me General Doumbié, now! He snapped at his aide. And contact Paris. We may need to reassess. Outside the embassy gates, citizens were beginning to gather. Small groups, quiet, holding up phones. On their screens, documents implicating the French government in regime change. Léof's blood ran cold. Back at the palace, General Doumbié was facing collapse. His calls to the embassy went unanswered. Reports flooded in. Loyalist battalions taking positions across the capital. Checkpoints falling. Ammunition failures. A major rushed in. Sir, we're seeing compromised documents online. Conversations between you and French intelligence. The president has released everything. For the first time, Doumbié felt panic. How had Traoré known? How had he prepared so completely? Inside, the room was alive with urgency. Intelligence officers monitoring intercepted feeds, field agents coordinating responses, security forces deploying across the capital. And waiting for him were the commanders of the 1st and 4th Battalions. Quiet, focused, already briefed the day before. Mr. President, Colonel Ouedraogo greeted him, handing over a tablet. We're tracking Doumbié's movements in real time. On the screen, red markers converging on key targets. Behind them, another layer of green, loyalist units closing. in silently. The trap was set. What Doumbié didn't know, by dawn he wouldn't be taking power. He'd be a prisoner of his own soldiers. The palace security system suddenly reactivated. Screens flickered to life, revealing multiple military vehicles converging, not from foreign forces, as General Doumbié had hoped, but from Burkina Faso's own 1st and 4th battalions. Their movements were deliberate, precise. These were loyalist units, closing in. In the 3rd Battalion's command center, confusion was hardening into panic. Lieutenant Colonel Senu, Doumbié's deputy, barked orders in a voice straining to stay firm. "Establish a defensive perimeter!" But the responses crackled back with grim clarity. "Sir, we're surrounded. The 1st and 4th Battalions have cut off all exits. They're demanding surrender." "And our men? They've seen the documents, sir. The messages, the bank transfers. They're asking if it's true. If General Doumbié really sold us out." The atmosphere was shifting, fast. These soldiers had believed they were defending the Republic. Now, confronted with evidence that their commanding officer was aligned with foreign powers, their sense of mission was crumbling. Colonel Zongo, leading the 1st Battalion, approached under a flag of truce. As he neared, many 3rd Battalion troops lowered their weapons unprompted. "Your ammunition has been sabotaged," Zongo told Senu bluntly. "Your comms are compromised, and your general has betrayed not just the president, but the nation." He held out a tablet, its screen displaying irrefutable evidence. "This isn't propaganda. It's being broadcast across the country. You have 10 minutes to stand down. No one needs to die for Doumbié's ambition." In the Shadow Command Center, Traoré received the report he had waited for. "The 3rd Battalion is standing down, sir," Ouedraogo confirmed. "Unit commanders are surrendering without a fight." He couldn't hide a note of admiration. "Your strategy worked. By exposing Doumbié's foreign ties before the coup took hold, you turned his own soldiers against him." Traoré nodded, though his expression remained solemn. "And Doumbié himself? Still in the palace, surrounded, he's requesting terms." Traoré paused, weighing the next step. How he handled Doumbié would define what followed. A public execution would ignite calls for vengeance, and risk turning Doumbié into a martyr. But a quiet imprisonment might breed conspiracy theories and unrest. "Bring him to the National Stadium," Traoré said at last. "Maximum security, no humiliation. Prepare for a public interrogation. Live, unscripted, no verdict, no show trial. Just Doumbié, the evidence, and the judgment of the people." The officers exchanged glances. It was bold, transparent, a direct appeal to the public, not the state. By noon, the coup had collapsed. The 3rd Battalion had surrendered en masse, many of its soldiers defecting to Traoré's forces once the truth came out. Outside the French embassy, crowds gathered, holding up printed documents and demanding accountability. Inside, Ambassador Lefebvre had retreated to a secure room, frantically trying to reach Paris. The diplomatic fallout was already spiraling. At the presidential palace, General Doumbié sat alone, watching from the window as 1st Battalion vehicles rolled through the gates. His personal guard had disappeared, loyalty dissolving in the face of his exposed treachery. He had not only failed, he had been outmaneuvered. Traoré had seen the coup coming, allowed it to unfold just far enough to expose everyone involved, and then crushed it from within. When the soldiers entered, Doumbié rose and surrendered his sidearm with quiet dignity. "General Maurice Doumbié, you are under arrest for treason against the Republic of Burkina Faso," declared Colonel Zongo. Doumbié said nothing. His mind was already elsewhere, bracing for what was to come. 4 hours later, Ibrahim Traoré stood at the center of the National Stadium, now packed to capacity. A simple table had been set between two chairs, facing each other. A large monitor sat between them, connected to the evidence database. Giant screens projected the scene for all to see, those in the stadium, and millions watching from home. Traoré wore a plain military uniform, no medals, no rank, signaling that this moment was not about power, but truth. Across from him, General Doumbié was led in. He too wore fatigues, but his face showed the fatigue of collapse. A hushed murmur rippled through the stadium. This was not spectacle, it was reckoning. Traoré leaned forward, his voice clear but conversational, amplified for the nation. General Doumbié, we served together for 15 years. We fought side by side. We built this transitional government together. Today, you led an armed attempt to remove me from office. He paused, looking directly at the man who had once been his comrade. I want to understand why, not just for myself, but for our people. Was it ambition? Was it ideology? Or was it something else? The silence that followed was absolute, as if the entire country held its breath, waiting for an answer. Doumbié, who had braced for condemnation, even humiliation, was momentarily taken aback by the directness of the question. The stadium was silent. Tens of thousands held their breath, waiting. The path you've chosen for our country is unsustainable, he finally said, voice tired but steady. Your policies of resource nationalism, your rejection of Western military aid against the insurgents, your pivot toward Russia and China, these choices have isolated us from the allies who could actually help develop our nation. Traoré nodded, absorbing the answer without interruption. When Doumbié finished, he asked quietly, and these concerns justified coordinating with French intelligence to overthrow the government? He gestured to the screen between them. The display came alive. Emails, surveillance photos, transcripts of phone calls. These are not fabrications, Maurice. These are your words, your meetings, your agreements. The images told a damning story. Doumbié, negotiating post-coup economic deals with French officials, promising the reinstatement of mining concessions cancelled by Traoré's government. There were even detailed deployment plans for that very morning, proof of direct military coordination, and most damning of all, bank records showing over $3 million transferred to offshore accounts under Doumbié's control. As the evidence built, Doumbié's composure began to fracture. The justifications he'd long believed, that he was acting for the nation's future, making hard but necessary choices, now rang hollow. Against this backdrop of corruption and foreign manipulation, his narrative collapsed. The crowd remained silent, but judgment hung heavy in the air. Then, Traoré spoke again. I have one question that I believe our citizens deserve an answer to, he said. At what point did you decide that our sovereignty was negotiable? That our resources belonged more to foreign interests than to our own people? That decisions about Burkina Faso's future should be made in Paris instead of Ouagadougou? The question hung, not as an accusation, but a plea for understanding, a search for the moment of betrayal. Doumbié looked up. For the first time, he met Traoré's gaze directly. You make it sound simple, he replied, a flicker of defiance in his voice. But governing isn't about ideals. It's about survival. The West controls the financial system, the development pipelines, the intelligence networks. If you defy them, they'll make sure you fail. Through sanctions, through economic isolation, even through terrorism, they conveniently refuse to help us fight. Traoré regarded him silently, then responded, not with anger, but clarity. So you chose surrender over struggle. You decided the cost of true independence was too high. He stood, addressing not just Doumbié, but the nation gathered around him. This is the choice we face. The easy path of dependence, where our resources enrich others, and we're kept just stable enough not to collapse. Or the hard path of self-determination, where we endure hardship now to build real prosperity for the generations to come. He turned back to Doumbié. What you never understood, Maurice, is that this isn't my ideology. It's not even my policy. It's the will of our people. People who have suffered enough under the illusion of partnership, when in truth they were being managed, not respected. A low murmur began to spread through the stadium. Not of anger, but rising resolve. An affirmation. The people of Burkina Faso don't want a president who simply manages foreign interests. Traoré continued. They want leadership that defends their birthright, the wealth beneath their soil, the right to choose their allies, the dignity of true independence. In the days that followed, the international fallout was swift. The French government, facing irrefutable proof of its intelligence services' role in the failed coup, issued a carefully worded statement expressing regret for unauthorized actions by certain elements within our diplomatic mission. But the repercussions were wider. Across West Africa, leaders in Mali, Niger, and Chad began quietly re-examining their own security arrangements, especially the presence of foreign advisors embedded in sensitive command structures. 1 month later at the Burkina Faso Military Academy, President Traoré stood before a new class of cadets. True loyalty, he said, is not to a man, not to me, not to any general. It is to the people of Burkina Faso, and to their right to determine their own destiny. He paused, letting the words settle. The greatest threat to our independence isn't a foreign army. It's the belief that we can't stand on our own, that we must surrender our sovereignty piece by piece in exchange for protection or for aid. Today I ask you to reject that lie. The cadets stood in silence. Then, slowly, they began to applaud, not out of obligation but conviction. New doctrine was taking root, not just in the army but in the soul of the nation.